Table of contents.
Norway.
Dr. Sydney Soclof. Dr. Sydney at earthlink.net. 2020. Norway is a Scandinavian country in the far northern part of Europe. The three Scandinavian countries are Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Some consider Finland to be a Scandinavian country, although by culture, and especially by language it differs from the other three.
Norway and Sweden occupy the Scandinavian peninsula, whereas Denmark is on the mainland of continental Europe.
This is the flag of Norway.
All Nordic countries, including the Faroe and Ålesund Islands, have a similar flag design, all based on the Dannebrog, the Danish flag.
They all display a cross with the intersection left of the center, called the Scandinavian cross.
Here are the flags of the three Scandinavian countries. Note the similarity of these flags.
Denmark, Norway, and Finland have comparable populations of around 5 million, and Sweden is up at around 9 million. Norway, with a population of only 4.5 million, has the smallest population of all of the Scandinavian countries.
Here the Netherlands, the UK and the US have been included for comparison.
Sweden, along with Norway and Finland, has a small population density, especially when compared with Denmark, which is by far the most densely populated of the Scandinavian countries. Norway is the most sparsely populated country in Europe, with fewer than 40 persons per square mile, 15 persons per square kilometers. About 3/4 of the population of Norway lives in urban centers.
Here is another comparison of the population density of several countries. We see that Norway, Sweden, and Finland are very sparsely populated as compared to Denmark, the Netherlands and the UK.
We see that the population density of Norway is about 1/3 that of the United States.
Here is a comparison of the areas of the Scandinavian countries in square kilometers. We see that Finland, Norway and Sweden are all about the same size, but that Denmark is very much smaller. Finland is just a little bit larger than Norway in area, and somewhat smaller than Sweden.
Now, the Netherlands and the United Kingdom are also included for purposes of comparison.
Norway has approximately the same land area as New Mexico, although it is far different that state in shape and other aspects of geography and climate.
Norway is a long and skinny country. It is about 1,100 miles or 1770 kilometers long.
At its widest point, Norway is only about 270 miles wide.
Norway shares a very long border with Sweden on the east, and also has much shorter borders with Finland and Russia in the far north.
Norway has a very long coastline, highly indented with many deep glacial fjords, bays, and inlets. There are also about 50,000 islands along the coast of Norway.
A large part of Norway is above the Arctic Circle.
Here is a physical or relief map of Europe. We see that most of Norway and Sweden are indeed mountainous.
Denmark, however, is remarkably flat, with elevations seldom exceeding 300 feet or 100 meters. Denmark is part of the North European plain that extends from northern France through Belgium, Germany, and Poland.
Although Norway is almost entirely mountainous with very little land available for farming, there are some relatively level areas in the southern part of Sweden.
About 2/3 of Norway is mountainous,
with many lakes.
The largest city in Norway by far is Oslo, with a population of 500,000. And more than half of the population live in the region of the Oslo Fjord. Bergen is the second largest city with a population of 250,000. Trondheim is the third largest with 150,000 population.
This shows the population distribution of Norway. We see the greatest population concentration is in the Oslo area, with lesser amounts around Bergen and Trondheim. The population north of Trondheim is very sparse.
Oslo is located at the northern end of a long fjord.
What is a fjord? And why is it spelled that funny way?
A fjord or fjord is a steep-sided inlet of the sea that has been scoured out by glacier.
The word fjord is of Norwegian origin, and Norway is, of course, known for its many and spectacular fjords.
Fjords are prehistoric relics of ancient glacial activity.
As a glacier flows through a valley, it cuts into the land and deepens the valley.
This often resulted in a steep-sided U-shaped valley.
The melting of the glacier leaves behind a glaciated valley.
The melting of the glaciers at the end of the Ice Age resulted in a rise in the sea level.
The resulting drowned valley is called a fjord.
This is a valley with glacier in it. If the glacier melts and the sea level rises, this will become a fjord.
A good example of a U-shaped glaciated valley that is far above sea level, and therefore not a drowned valley, is Yosemite Valley in California.
When glaciers scoured out these regions, they were above sea level. When the sea level rose, the valleys were drowned by the sea.
In some fjord-side streams plunge hundreds of feet over the edge of the fjord. Some of the world's highest waterfalls are of this type.
Here is an example of a waterfall in a fjord.
Let us now investigate the profile of a fjord.
Many fjords were carved by giant glaciers during the last ice age, some 10 to 20,000 years ago.
This is a cross-sectional view of the resulting fjord.
Fjords are usually deeper at the upstream end. At the downstream end there is often a terminal moraine where the glacier deposited debris.
If the sea level is lower than the terminal moraine, a landlocked fjord is the result. There are many such examples in Scotland where they are called lochs.
This is the top view of a loch, a landlocked fjord.
There are many places in the world with fjords. They are mostly higher latitude west coast phenomena in areas with coastal mountain ranges. The most notable places are in Norway, Alaska, Chile, and New Zealand.
Norway has numerous fjords along its west coast.
Norwegian fjords are noted for their grandeur. Many other examples of fjords are to be found in Scotland, Greenland, Alaska, British Columbia, Chile, New Zealand and Antarctica.
A fjord differs from most inlets and bays in sheer, parallel walls, often extending far below the water surface.
Often shallow at the mouth, fjords are frequently very deep farther inland.
The longest fjord in Norway is Sonja Fjord. It is 4,000 feet, 1220 meters, deep and over 100 miles, 160 kilometers, long.
This is Sonja Fjord.
This Hardanger Fjord. It is 179 kilometers long.
Here is Norway Fjord.
Scotland has many fjords called firths,
and landlocked fjords called lochs. As an example, Loch Lomond.
The Oslo Fjord is not a true fjord in the geological sense. In Norwegian, the term fjord can refer to a wide range of waterways. It is almost 100 kilometers from the entrance of the fjord to the port of Oslo.
This is a satellite view of Oslo Fjord.
Now a brief tour of the history of Norway.
Indo-European peoples settled Norway's coast in antiquity. establishing a permanent settlement near the present capital of Oslo some 6,000 years ago.
The interior was more sparsely settled, owing to extremes of climate and difficult terrain. And even today the country's population is concentrated in the southern part of the country in coastal cities such as Oslo, Bergen and Trondheim.
Dependent on fishing and farming, early Norwegians developed a seafaring tradition that would reach its apex in the Viking era, when Norse warriors regularly raided the British Isles, the coasts of Western Europe, and even the interior of Russia.
For some centuries the Scandinavians had remained quietly in their northern home. But in the 8th century a change, possibly economic, possibly political, occurred in this area and provoked among them a spirit of unrest and adventurous enterprise.
The Vikings were also known as Norsemen or Northmen. Their homelands were the Scandinavian countries of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark.
First the Vikings raided England. Then they attacked Ireland and the Shetland, Orkney, and Faroe Islands.
Eventually the Vikings ranged as far west as Iceland and Greenland and established colonies there. They even settled briefly in North America.
The Vikings went south into Russia as far as the Ukraine and the Black Sea. In fact, the name Russia is derived from the name the Vikings were called, Rus.
The Vikings traveled all over the Mediterranean Sea to Sicily,
then to Italy,
and then even as far as Constantinople.
Norwegians colonized parts of the British Isles, the Faroe Islands, and Iceland. From there they pushed on to Greenland and the coasts of Labrador and Newfoundland.
The Danes conquered large parts of England in the 7th to 9th centuries.
The Danes established a colony in northern France called Normandy. Normandy got its name from the Norse or Northmen.
The daring sea rovers to whom these unusual achievements were due are commonly known as Vikings. And the period of their activity, extending from the middle of the 8th century to the beginning of the 11th, is popularly known as the Viking Age. It was to their attacks upon settlements in and ultimate conquest of England that led to the Scandinavian influence upon the English language.
The Vikings sailed from Scandinavia in 3 main directions from the 700s to the 1000s. The Danes went west and south and raided Germany, France, England, Spain, and the Mediterranean coast. The Swedes went to Eastern Europe.
The Norwegians traveled to North America.
The Danes conquered a large part of England, which became known as Danelaw or Danish law.
For over 200 years, from about 800 to 1000, Europe was ravaged and plundered by this fierce group of warriors from the sea.
The Vikings not only raided and plundered wide areas of Europe, but they also settled and colonized various places and left a lasting influence.
The Vikings traveled immense distance from their Scandinavian homeland. To the west they conquered and held for generations large parts of Britain and Ireland. They established colonies in Iceland and Greenland and even for a while in far-off North America. To the south they occupied northern France. They raided cities along the coasts of Portugal and Spain.
They sailed through the Straits of Gibraltar to Italy, plundered Sicily and the northern shores of Africa and attacked Constantinople, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. They went overland and down rivers through Russia down to the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea and established settlements such as Kiev in present-day Ukraine.
What caused the Vikings to leave their Scandinavian homeland and make such long and arduous journeys? There are several possible theories. Overpopulation at home, conflict between various groups of the home, desire for plunder, sense of adventure and desire for heroism, relative helplessness of their victims. Probably it was some combination of all of these.
At home these Scandinavians were independent farmers, but at sea they were raiders and pillagers.
The origin of the word Viking is not certain. One theory is that the Vikings burning, plundering, and killing earned them the name Vikinger, meaning pirate in the early Scandinavian languages.
During the Viking period, the Scandinavian countries seem to have possessed a practically inexhaustible surplus of manpower and leaders of ability, who could organize groups of warriors into conquering bands. These bands would travel the seas in their longboats and attack cities and towns along the coasts of Europe with hit-and-run raids.
The term Viking Age has come to denote those years from about 740 to 1050, when Scandinavians set out on innumerable plundering expeditions abroad. The Vikings were aided in their many plundering expeditions abroad by several important factors: surplus population, superior ships and weapons, well-developed military organization, and a spirit of adventure seem to have combined to cause this great movement.
Norsemen were trained from childhood to be strong and self-reliant. Running, jumping, and wrestling took the place of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Their other subjects were skating, skiing, snowshoeing, swimming, rowing, and riding horseback. As soon as a child could carry a weapon, he was taught to thrust a sword, to swing a battle axe, and to throw a spear.
A part of their success was due to their religion, for the Norsemen's gods were warriors too. Thor the Thunderer made constant war against the ice and snow giants of the north. The chief god, Odin, presided over Valhalla, the warrior's heaven. Death in battle was considered the most honorable death. Only by the death could a Norseman enter Valhalla. So, the Norsemen battled unafraid and joyful, calling upon their gods to help them.
The Vikings were masters at shipbuilding. Some of the Viking ships or longships were quite long for that time. They were strongly built of oak, and from 40 to 60 oarsmen sat on the rowers' benches.
The ships were pointed at each end, so that they could go forward or backward without turning around. They had tall curved prows, usually carved in the shapes of dragons.
The ships were very maneuverable, and had a shallow draft, so that they could go up rivers and land on beaches. The Vikings often sailed far up various rivers such as the Thames as far as London, and the Seine as far as Paris on their expeditions. Although the Vikings did on occasion sail far out into the ocean, such as to Iceland and Greenland, they preferred to sail close to shore, so that they could cook their meals and spend the night on land.
These dragon ships, as they were often called, usually appeared in a bay at about dawn. As soon as the ships reached the beach, fierce warriors jumped out, shouting battle cries. Armed with swords and battle axes, they attacked the sleeping villagers. They killed many of them, captured some of the women and young men, and gathered all the loot that their ships could carry. Then they sailed away.
Norway became a part of the Kalmar Union in 1397, which consisted of Norway, Sweden and Denmark.
Norway was later weakened by plague and economic deterioration in the Middle Ages and was dominated by neighboring Denmark and Sweden. Norwegians turned to trading in fish and lumber.
In 1814 Norway was ceded by Denmark to Sweden,
and finally became an independent country in 1905.
Norway has become a major maritime transporter of the world's goods, as well as a world leader in specialized shipbuilding.
In the 1970s, the exploitation of offshore oil and natural gas became the major maritime industry, with Norway emerging in the 1990s as one of the world's leading petroleum exporters.
The country has also produced many important artists, among them composer Edvard Grieg, painter Edvard Munch, playwright Henrik Ibsen and novelists Knut Hamsun and Sigrid Undset.
The great tradition of exploration by such explorers as Leif Erikson and his father, Erik the Red, more than 1,000 years ago has continued into modern times. This is exemplified by such men as Fridtjof Nansen, Roald Amundsen, and Thor Heyerdahl.
The Norwegian language.
The Norwegian language is in the Germanic language group.
This shows the geographic location of the speakers of the various Germanic languages. The Norwegian language belongs to the North Germanic branch of the Germanic language group.
The Norwegian alphabet has 3 more letters than the Latin alphabet. These are pronounced as the vowels in bad, burn, and ball.
The Norwegian, Swedish and Danish languages are very similar and are understood throughout all 3 of these Scandinavian countries.
Here's an example of numbers from 1 to 10 in the various Scandinavian languages as well as English for comparison. We see a great similarity.
Now Finnish has been added. And we note that Finnish is very different from these other languages, since it is not in the Germanic family of languages.
Old Norse is the parent language of the 3 modern languages: Icelandic, Faroese, and Norwegian.
Old Norse language is the classical North Germanic language used from roughly 1150 to 1350. It is the literary language of the Icelandic sagas, skaldic poems, and Eddas. The term Old Norse embraces Old Norwegian as well as Old Icelandic.
Old Norse is distinguishable from the other Old Scandinavian languages of this period only by minor differences in the writing traditions.
Oslo is the capital and largest city of Norway.
Oslo in the southern part of Norway.
At the end of a long fjord,
called the Oslo Fjords or Oslofjorden.
This is the Oslo Fjord.
The Aker River flows through Oslo into the Oslo Fjord.
This is the Oslo Harbor.
Here is Oslo and vicinity at the end of the Oslo Fjord.
This is a view of Oslo and the city hall from the harbor.
Oslo was founded by King Harald Hardrada in about 1050, at a place where the Aker River enters the Oslo Fjord.
In 1300 the Akershus fortress was built by King Haakon V.
After the city was destroyed by fire in 1624, Christian IV of Denmark, who also ruled Norway, built a new town farther west on the opposite side of the Aker River, under the walls of the Akershus fortress,
and called it Christiania. The new town eventually spread to include the old site.
This is the Akershus castle.
This is the entrance to Akershus castle. Note the word Christiania, the original name of Oslo, above the entrance.
Here are some of the walls of the Akershus fortress.
Here again are some of the walls of the Akershus fortress.
This is the Akershus fortress.
In 1814 Christiania became the capital of Norway and replaced Bergen as the largest city in Norway. Christiania was renamed Oslo in 1925 and developed rapidly after World War II.
Norway was occupied by Germany during the World War II years of 1940 to 1945. In 1945 Norway becomes free again, and Oslo develops rapidly in the post-war period.
Oscarsborg Fortress, Norwegian, Oscarsborg Festning, is a coastal fortress in the Oslo Fjord, close to the small town of Drabak. The fortress is situated on 2 small islets. The fortress is best known for the sinking of the German heavy cruiser Blue Share in April 1940.
The Oslo Fjord was the scene of a key event in the German invasion of Norway in 1940. The invasion included a planned landing of 1,000 troops transported by ship to Oslo. Colonel Eriksson, commander of the Oscarsborg fortress near Drabak, which was maintained mainly for historical purposes, sank the German heavy cruiser Blue Share in the Drabak Narrows.
The fortress's resistance blocked the route to Oslo, thus delaying the rest of the group long enough for the royal family, government, parliament, and national treasury to be evacuated. The result was that Norway never surrendered to the Germans, leaving the Quisling government illegitimate, and permitting Norway to participate as an ally in the war, rather than as a conquered nation.
Cruise ships usually dock here right below the Akershus castle,
and very close to the center of the city.
Here is a cruise ship docked below Akershus castle. Akershus fortress, or in Norwegian Akershus festning, is also known as Akershus castle or Akershus slot. It is a medieval castle built to protect Oslo that overlooks the harbor. The fortress was originally built in 1300, but the present structure dates mainly from the 17th century. It is still used for state occasions. The castle grounds afford beautiful views of Oslo and the fjord, as well as containing many quaint buildings and gardens within its grounds. It has also been used as a prison.
Here are some of the places of interest in Oslo.
Here are more of the places of interest in Oslo.
And a few more.
Oslo is the center of Norwegian trade, banking, industry, and shipping. Oslo Harbor is the largest, as well as the busiest, in the country.
The population of the Oslo area is about 500,000. Oslo covers a very large region within its city limits and, as such, is one of the world's largest capital cities in area.
However, this area consists mainly of farmland and forests as well as 340 lakes. So it is the least densely populated capital city in Europe.
The Oslo Tourist Information Office is located just to the front of the Radhuset or City Hall.
Norway's Resistance Museum, also known as the Norwegian Home Front Museum, or in Norwegian, Norges Heimfront Museum, is a museum within the Akershus Fortress complex.
The museum collection focuses on Norwegian resistance during the occupation of Norway by Nazi Germany from 1940 to 1945. The museum displays equipment, photos and documents from the war years.
The principal street of Oslo is Karl Johans gate. The word gate is pronounced gate and is Norwegian for street.
During the mid-19th century, Norway and Sweden were both ruled as one kingdom, under Karl Johan. It was then that the grand main street that bears his name was built. At the western end of Karl Johans gate is the Royal Palace.
Here is downtown Oslo, showing Karl Johans gate. It is the seat of the Norwegian Parliament, government and the residence of the royal family.
This shows the central area including the ship, Akershus Fortress, Karl Johans gate, and the Royal Palace.
At the western end of Karl Johans gate is the Royal Palace or Castle, Slottet.
At the Royal Palace, visitors can see the changing of the guard daily when the king is in residence.
At the eastern end of Karl Johans gate is the Stortinget or Norwegian Parliament building.
Norway's government is a constitutional monarchy.
Karl Johans gate is the center of city life.
The Radhuset, the Oslo City Hall, is down by the waterfront, just a few blocks from Karl Johans gate.
This is another view of the Radhuset, the Oslo City Hall.
The City Hall opened in 1950 during the celebration of Oslo's 900th anniversary.
The Nobel Peace Prize is handed out on December 10th each year here at the Oslo City Hall.
The other Nobel Prizes are handed out in the Stockholm City Hall.
This is the Oslo City Hall, or Rådhuset.
This is another view of the Oslo City Hall.
This is another view of the Oslo City Hall.
This is another view of the Oslo City Hall.
This is another view of the Oslo City Hall, or Rådhuset.
This is a mural in the Oslo City Hall.
This is a mural in the Oslo City Hall.
The Nobel Peace Center is a showcase for the Nobel Peace Prize and the ideals it represents. The Nobel Peace Center was opened in 2005, and is located in the former Oslo West Railway Station building dating from 1872, which ceased to be used as a railway station in 1989. It is located close to the Oslo City Hall and overlooking the harbor.
The center presents the Nobel Peace Prize laureates and their work. In addition to telling the story of Alfred Nobel and the other Nobel Prizes. This is done using multimedia and interactive technology, exhibitions, meetings, debates, theater, concerts and conferences, as well as a broad educational program and regular guided tours.
The National Museum of Art, Architecture and Design in Oslo is the National Museum of. The museum's exhibition venues in Oslo are the National Gallery, the Museum of Contemporary Art, the National Museum of Architecture, and the Museum of Decorative Arts and Design.
The Historical Museum and National Gallery, National Gallery, are just to the north side of Karl Johans gate.
The Museum of Applied Arts houses exhibits of modern Scandinavian design.
This is the Museum of Applied Arts.
The Munch Museum is an art museum in Oslo, dedicated to the life and works of the Norwegian artist, Edvard Munch.
The Munch Museum has in its permanent collection well over half of the artist's entire production of paintings, and at least one copy of all his prints. This amounts to over 1,200 paintings and 18,000 prints.
It is about 4 kilometers, or a 10 to 15 minute drive out to the Munch Museum from the center of Oslo.
One of the most famous paintings of Edvard Munch, The Scream, is now in the National Gallery.
Here are paintings on display at the Edvard Munch Museum.
Here are more paintings on display at the Edvard Munch Museum.
This is a painting on display at the Edvard Munch Museum.
This is another painting on display at the Edvard Munch Museum.
Oslo is 1,000 years old, but still is a very modern city.
The leading Norwegian cultural institutions are to be found in Oslo. The city center contains the National Theatre, the Norwegian Theatre, the Oslo New Theatre, and the Norwegian Opera.
The Norwegian National Opera has performances at the Oslo Opera House.
Here is a typical Oslo street scene.
This is the Rika Hotel in Oslo.
The University of Oslo, founded in 1811, is the oldest and largest university in Norway, and one of Northern Europe's most prestigious universities.
The university has 28,000 students and is located about 2 miles north of the downtown area.
The Oslo Opera House, in Norwegian, Operahuset, is the home of the Norwegian National Opera and Ballet. It is situated in central Oslo, at the head of the Oslo Fjord, and contains 1,100 rooms.
The main auditorium of the Oslo Opera House seats 1,364 seats.
On the Big Bay Peninsula, about 3 miles from central Oslo, there are several museums.
On the Big Bay Peninsula there is the Norwegian Museum of Cultural History, or Norsk Folkemuseum, the Viking Ship Museum, the Norwegian Maritime Museum, the Fram Museum, and the Kon-Tiki Museum.
The Viking Ship Museum displays the world's two best preserved wooden Viking ships built in the 9th century, as well as small boats, sledges, a cart with exceptional ornamentation, implements, tools, harness, textiles and household utensils.
The Viking Ship Museum is located 2 miles east of the downtown area.
The Viking Ship Museum has the remains of 3 ships dating from about 800 AD.
This is the Viking Ship Museum.
This is another view of the Viking Ship Museum.
This is the Viking Ship Museum.
This is another view of the Viking Ship Museum.
This is the Viking Ship Museum.
This is an exhibit in the Viking Ship Museum.
This is another exhibit in the Viking Ship Museum.
This is an exhibit in the Viking Ship Museum.
The Norsk Folk Museum, the Norwegian Museum of Cultural History, has exhibits on traditional Norwegian culture and history.
The Norsk Folk Museum is located close to the Viking Ship Museum, 2 miles east of the downtown area.
This open-air museum features 155 authentic buildings from different regions of Norway, including some uniquely Norwegian, Stave Churches.
The Norwegian Maritime Museum, Norwegian, Norsk Maritime Museum, previously known as the Norsk Sjøfarts Museum, was founded in 1914.
The Norwegian Maritime Museum is about 3 miles southeast of the downtown area on the Big Day Peninsula, and is near several other museums, including the Fram Museum, the Kon-Tiki Museum, the Norwegian Museum of Cultural History, and the Viking Ship Museum.
The museum's exhibits on coast culture and maritime history include boat models, fishing, marine archaeology, marine paintings, shipbuilding, and shipping.
The Fram Museum houses the polar exploration ship, Fram.
The Fram took Fridtjof Nansen to the Arctic in 1903, and Roald Amundsen to the South Pole in 1910.
This is in the Fram Museum.
This is again in the Fram Museum.
The Kon-Tiki Museum houses the wooden raft that carried Thor Heyerdahl on a 4,000 journey from Peru to Polynesia.
These are exhibits at the Kon-Tiki Museum.
These an exhibit in the Kon-Tiki Museum.
This is Thor Heyerdahl and his crew.
This is an exhibit in the Kon-Tiki Museum.
This is another exhibit in the Kon-Tiki Museum.
A major point of interest in Oslo is the Vigeland Sculpture Museum.
The Vigeland Sculpture Museum, or Vigeland Museet, is 2 miles northeast of the downtown area.
The Vigeland Sculpture Park contains 192 sculptures with more than 600 figures, all modeled in full size by Gustav Vigeland without the assistance of pupils or other artists.
This is the Vigeland Sculpture Museum.
These are sculptures in the Vigeland Sculpture Park.
The centerpiece of the park is the 46-foot-tall totem pole of tangled bodies known as the Monolith of Life.
These are sculptures in the Vigeland Sculpture Park.
These are more sculptures in the Vigeland Sculpture Park.
These are sculptures in the Vigeland Sculpture Park.
These are more sculptures in the Vigeland Sculpture Park.
This is a church in Oslo.
You can go for a ride of a replica of a Viking ship in the Oslo harbor.
This is a parade on Norway National Independence Day, May 17th.
This is a parade on Norway National Independence Day, May 17th.
Outside of Oslo is the beautiful and lush Norwegian countryside.
This is the Norwegian countryside.
Norway has the largest collection of stave churches in the world.
The Norwegians built the first stave churches, or stavkirker, around the year 1050.
When Saint Olaf brought Christianity to Norway, the Norwegians turned to the craft they knew best: woodworking, to build their new churches.
The basic architectural element in these wooden churches are the staves, which are vertical planks of wood set edge to edge across the walls.
This is a staved church.
This is another stave church.
Norwegians blended Christian symbols with Viking images to create these impressive buildings.
Note the wooden dragon heads decorating the eaves.
Other European countries built wooden churches, but only the Norwegian churches are still standing.
Of the 1,000 Norwegian stave churches built in the Middle Ages, only 28 survive today.
A good way to see the major sights of Oslo, especially for a first-time visitor, is a hop-on, hop-off bus. The complete loop in Oslo is 1 hour and 15 minutes if you stay on the bus. A bus comes by every 30 minutes.
The cost is about 150 Norwegian krone, or $18.
Tour are narrated in English, French, German, Japanese, Italian, Norwegian, Russian, and Spanish.
This shows the route of the city sightseeing hop-on hop-off bus.
These are the 15 stops on the tour route.
The money of Norway.
1 Norwegian krone equals 12 US cents.
1 euro equals 9.4 Norwegian krone.
$1 US equals 8.4 Norwegian krone.
$1 US equals 8.4 Norwegian krone.
This is a 50 kroner banknote, worth about $6 US.
Norwegian cuisine in its traditional form is based largely on the raw materials readily available in Norway and its mountains, wilderness and coast. It differs in many respects from its continental counterparts, with a stronger focus on game and fish.
Like other Scandinavian countries, the cold board, cold table, or buffet-style meal is popular, emphasis being placed on fish, particularly salmon, which is a national favorite.
Fårikål is a traditional Norwegian dish, consisting of pieces of mutton with bone, cabbage, whole black pepper, and often a little wheat flour, cooked for several hours in a casserole. Traditionally served with potatoes boiled in their jackets.
Kjøttkaker, meat cakes, are also quite common. Served with sauerkraut, flavored with caraway.
Reindeer or reindeer steak appears on many menus, particularly further north. Similar to beef, but is a richer, slightly sweet flavored meat.
The Norwegians are partial to wild berries, either as an accompaniment to meat or as a dessert. 2 varieties native to Norway are lingonberries, similar to cranberries, and cloudberries, like orange-colored raspberries. They are a little crunchy and have a sharper taste.
The one traditional Norse dish with a claim to international popularity is smoked salmon. It is now a major export, and could be considered the most important Scandinavian contribution to modern international cuisine.
Laksegger is sliced smoked salmon with an egg omelette and tomatoes.
Fenalår is a cured and seasoned leg of a lamb.
Lutefisk or lye fish is cod that has been steeped in lye. It was first prepared this way when refrigeration was non-existent and a way needed to preserve the fish for longer periods. It is somewhat popular in the United States as a heritage food, and it still has a place in Norwegian cuisine.
Ramagret is Norwegian porridge made with sour cream, whole milk, wheat flour, butter, and salt.
Norway's national drink is aquavit, a Norwegian liquor made from potatoes. Its strong taste and character comes from a variation of spices. The name aquavit comes from the Latin words aqua vitae, which means water of life.
Local handicrafts include the traditional knitted sweaters in Nordic design.
There is also good quality silverware, pewter, wrought iron accessories, glass and ceramics, and furs.
And trolls make popular souvenirs, as do candles.
Will it be hot? Or will it be cold in Oslo?
This is the climate of Oslo.
Oslo is at a latitude of almost 60 degrees north. As such, its latitude is close to that of Greenland and the northern reaches of Canada and Alaska. However, its climate is greatly moderated by the effects of the Atlantic Ocean, and in particular, the Gulf Stream.
Here are the average high and low temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit throughout the year in Oslo. The midday highs will be in the 50s, and at nighttime, the temperature will drop to around a chilly 40 degrees.
Here are the average high and low temperatures in degrees Celsius throughout the year in Oslo.
Here is the average number of rainy days per month throughout the year in Oslo.
It rains about every other day in Oslo year-round. So our prediction is that it might rain when we get there.
Here are some other ports of interest in Norway.
This shows again some other ports of interest in Norway.
Except for Oslo. These ports are all on the western, or Atlantic coast of Norway. Except for Oslo. These ports are all on the western, or Atlantic coast of Norway.
Trondheim has a population of 180,000, making it the third most populous municipality in Norway after Oslo and Bergen.
Trondheim lies on the south shore of the Trondheim Fjord, at the mouth of the river Nidelva. Trondheim Fjord, an inlet of the Norwegian Sea, is Norway's third longest fjord at 130 kilometers, 81 miles, long.
Trondheim is reached from the Atlantic Ocean by way of the Trondheims Fjord.
This is a map of Trondheim showing the Nidelva River.
This is a view of central Trondheim and Nidelva River.
Trondheim was founded in 997 as a trading post, and was the capital of Norway during the Viking Age until 1217.
During World War II, Trondheim was occupied by Nazi Germany from April 9, 1940, the first day of the invasion of Norway, until the end of the war in Europe. In May 1945, the Germans turned the city into a major base for submarines.
A statue of Olav Tryggvason, the founder of Trondheim, is located in the city's central plaza, mounted on top of an obelisk.
Stiftsgården is the royal residence in Trondheim. Originally constructed in 1774 by Cecily Christine Scholar. At 140 rooms constituting 4,000 square meters, 43,056 square feet. It is possibly the largest wooden building in Northern Europe, and has been used by royals and their guests since 1800.
The Nidaros Cathedral and the Archbishop's Palace are located side by side in the middle of the city center. The cathedral, built from 1070 on, is the most important Gothic monument in Norway and was Northern Europe's most important Christian pilgrimage. Today, it is the northernmost medieval cathedral in the world, and the second largest in Scandinavia.
During the Middle Ages and again after independence was restored in 1814, the Nidaros Cathedral was the coronation church of the Norwegian kings. King Haakon VII was the last monarch to be crowned there in 1906. Starting with King Olav V in 1957, the coronation was replaced by consecration in 1991. The present King Harald V and Queen Sonja were consecrated in the cathedral.
The Norwegian University of Science and Technology, commonly known as NTNU, is located in Trondheim. NTNU is the second largest of the 8 universities in Norway, and, as its name suggests, has the main national responsibility for higher education in engineering and technology.
In addition to engineering and the natural and physical sciences, the university offers advanced degrees in other academic disciplines ranging from the social sciences, the arts, medicine, architecture and fine art. The university consists of 7 faculties with a total of 52 departments and has approximately 22,000 students.
The Ringve Museum in Trondheim is Norway's national museum for music and musical instruments, with collections from all over the world.
The Sverresborg Trøndelag Folk Museum is an open-air museum. The museum has more than 60 vintage buildings which show the building traditions in Trøndelag, from town and country. From mountain to coast, the Stave Church from Ålesund dates from 1170, but the majority of the houses are from the 18th and 19th centuries.
The museum dates back to 1909, when a group of Trondheim residents started to collect characteristic examples of the way houses were built in earlier times. In 1914, the area surrounding the ruins of King Sverre's medieval castle was appropriated for the site of the new open-air museum.
This shows the location of the Sverresborg Trøndelag Folk Museum near Trondheim.
Ålesund has a population of 48,000 in the area.
This shows the location of Ålesund.
Ålesund is the most important fishing harbor in Norway. The town's fishing fleet is one of the most modern in Europe. In the 1950s and 1960s, Ålesund was one of the chief stations of the herring fishery business.
Ålesund and surroundings also has a large furniture industry, with some well-known household items manufactured here.
This is a map of Ålesund.
This is a satellite view of Ålesund.
This is another satellite view of Ålesund.
Atlanterhavsparken is an aquarium located 3 kilometers from Ålesund. It is one of Northern Europe's largest saltwater aquariums.
Atlanterhavsparken opened in 1998 by the Norwegian royal couple during the 150th anniversary of Ålesund. It is among the most visited tourist attractions in Norway.
This is Atlanterhavsparken.
This is Atlanterhavsparken.
Jugendstil Centeret is a national Jugendstil, Art Nouveau, center located in the former Swan Pharmacy building in central Ålesund, the Art Nouveau town of Norway.
The building was built from 1905 to 1907. It was the first listed Art Nouveau Jugendstil monument in Ålesund, 1984, and it includes the town's best preserved Art Nouveau interior.
Jugendstil Centeret is an interpretation center showing both modern multimedia exhibitions and international art and design of Art Nouveau. The Art Nouveau Center was opened by Queen Sonja of Norway in 2003.
The Fisheries Museum lies by the attractive harbor side of Ålesund. It is housed in a warehouse from the 1860s that escaped the ravages of the Great Fire of 1904. The museum contains extensive displays, informing the visitor about the development of the fish processing industry in the town. Demonstrations are given of traditional trades such as coopering.
The town museum gives exciting insight into Ålesund's history through pictures and artifacts. There are exhibits of the Great Town Fire of 1904, fisheries, regional boats and World War II, and the fantastic town model depicting Ålesund in 1898.
Ålesund Museum is in the Ålesund town center, with excellent harbor view and museum park. The museum building itself is originally from 1919, and its distinctive character shows signs of earlier times.
Molde has a population of 25,000.
This shows the location of Molde, just to the north and east of Ålesund.
This is Molde on the Molde Fjord N.
This is a map of Molde.
This is a view of Molde and Molde Fjord N.
The Jostedal Museum, one of Norway's largest folk museums, was established in 1912. Old buildings originating from all over the region have been moved here to form a typical cluster of farm buildings, including open hearth houses, sheds, outhouses, smokehouses and a small chapel. The town street with Molly's Cafe shows typical Molde town houses from the pre-World War I period.
This shows the location of the Jostedal Museum on the outskirts of Molde.
Trollstigen, near Molde, is the most visited tourist road in Norway. The road twists and turns its way up an almost vertical mountainside to an altitude of 858 meters, 2,815 feet. Trollstigen is a popular tourist attraction due to its steep incline of 9%, and 11 hairpin bends up a steep mountainside.
Trollstigen was opened in 1936 by King Haakon VII after 8 years of construction. During the top tourist season, about 2,500 vehicles pass daily.
This is a view of Trollstigen.
Mardalsfossen, near Molde, is the highest waterfall in Northern Europe and the fourth highest waterfall in the world, cascading 297 meters down into the valley.
The total height of the waterfall is 655 meters, 2,149 feet.
Olden is located at the mouth of the Old Delva River in the Jostedal Valley along the Nordfjorden. The population of Olden is 500.
This shows the location of Olden on the Nordfjorden.
Olden is a major tourist area. The Vigeland Glacier, a popular hiking destination, is located about 25 kilometers, 16 miles, south of Olden, at the end of the Jostedal Valley.
Olden is the gateway to the Jostedal Glacier, the largest glacier on the European mainland.
The Jostedalsbreen, or Jostedal Glacier, is one of the biggest glaciers in Europe.
This glacier has close to 50 arms extending in various communities. The one extending closest to Olden is called the Jostedalsbreen, the Jostedal Glacier.
This is the magnificent sight of blue ice at the face of the Jostedal Glacier.
This is Jostedalsbreen, or Jostedal Glacier.
Table of contents.